welcome back to the Crux. I just wanted to share a little bit about how I was from my road trip, which I haven't done in a long time. Drove up the Northeast, East Coast from Florida, representing little flow with the pastel. Probably don't see this too often, huh? And I'm not 80, and I'm not wearing golf pants. So, driving up the East Coast, the colony states, as I like to call them, how this whole place got kicked off. And a lot of history, obviously, on the East Coast, coming all the way from Florida all the way to upstate New York. My goodness, New York. First time I was really in this part, in the Hudson Valley. Gorgeous. Wow. Beautiful. The whole place is beautiful. And so cool how it changes. From beaches to marsh to, the hardwoods, mountains, really old mountain ranges on the East Coast that have melted into farmland. I believe the Appalachian Mountains is one of the oldest mountain ranges on the earth. Since it stood so long, a great deal of it has melted on both sides, turning into healthy farmland and not so tall. Kind of hard to call them mountains, I think of mountains, I think of, something that's 8, 12, 15,000 feet tall. If you're in the 3 to 5 range, big hills, but mountains, they're called mountains on a map. And so in this episode, I want to talk about my road trip, what I realized, and how that affects us today. The beauty of it is we can, if we pause, we can find a thread to start pulling on that leads us to an understanding from almost anything. It could be how a chef prepares a meal in a certain way. And then what was the curiosity and how that chef, he or her, him or her, decided to spin an old recipe into something new. It can come from anything, really. And so this is just coming off my drive. When I get up into Pennsylvania, which obviously is still today known for industry, heavy industry, iron, coal, natural gas. Certainly, when it was a colony state from its origins, it was a state where a lot of factories were, a lot of stuff got made. One of the main arteries of the heartbeat of America, Pennsylvania. So I'm always sad a little bit for Pennsylvania how it didn't get to negotiate any beachfront real estate. New York kind of surrounds and dips down and cuts Pennsylvania off from the ocean. I thought that was unfair. I always wondered how'd that boundary get negotiated? Because in a way, Pennsylvania should just stick straight out to the Atlantic and New York could have a small piece. But, New York is a cool name. Pennsylvania is a great name too. Anyway, that's the state I was born in. So Penn State, in the area of Penn State. And I got to visit my hometown too, which I'd never been to since I was there. I left at the age of 2. Very cool. River runs through it. They've parked it off. It's a great environment. Felt good to be there. Hills on both sides, mountains, I guess. A lot of the towns, what's cool in Pennsylvania is almost all the towns are in these valleys. So you're driving on a highway up above, you look down, you see valleys and farmland. And when I started to pay closer attention after I got off Highway 81 and dropped onto the old original highway, which was 11, it's nicknamed Bloody 11 because it's a 3-lane highway. So for a while, whichever direction you're going, north or south, you get 2 lanes. And then it switches to you get 1 lane. And the reason for the nickname, this is government engineering. I know the idea I'm sure was great. It's like, hey, we'll save on resources. We'll only have 3 lanes instead of 4. But here's why it's called Bloody 11. It's known for the accidents that occur, head-on collisions, when that second lane drops off that you had for a while and drops you down to 1, and you're still in that second lane, except now oncoming traffic has that second lane, and boom, huge accidents, just straight up 60 mile an hour head-on collisions with each other. The same as hitting a wall at 120 miles an hour, 2 cars hitting each other at 60. So Bloody 11, snakes through the towns themselves. You'll literally be, for occasionally with red lights. It's not just a thoroughfare. It goes through the town. So I'm driving through these towns and I've got pictures. So we're going to be mixing these in as I go. And there's these charming factory side, riverside towns right next to the Susquehanna River. The first image we're looking at here is a roadside diner that, from the 60s probably was a very popular place to eat. Just 100 feet, right, out the window is the Susquehanna River. I can imagine people walking to this restaurant. Certainly it has parking for folks pulling up in their cars. It's right next to a great town. We're looking at Plymouth up to Pittston. Just a small segment. I added a couple extra hours to my trip by doing this. But this was the point. The point was to see a piece of the countryside, if you will, that you miss when you're on the highway, Highway 81. And it hit me hard. You're looking at this picture, right? This would have been a place where millions of conversations would have happened over the decades, and it's not operational today. In one regard, Highway 81 now takes people off Highway 11, but there's still a lot of people that are living in this town. I saw houses. It's cool because they're perched up on the side of a hill, side of a mountain. When it flattens out, you see a lot more humble abodes, stores and that sort of thing, schools. But what broke my heart is that this town and all of the towns leading up to Pittston, which was a pretty big town where I eventually left and jumped back on Highway 81, were noble places to live. And there are thousands of these towns, these industrial, sourced towns where people made stuff and went home. And the key part of it all was they were making stuff the rest of the world was so excited to receive, because if it was made in America, it was the very best. It was the very best quality. We took pride in what we made. And I'm sure that's common throughout the planet. But I don't think it's common where stuff generally is made today in China. I don't see, there's no system there for them to be proud of their work. My understanding of communism is there's really no upward mobility for you. Like in the Soviet version of communism, the factory worker made as much as the manager. And so what's the incentive for that factory worker to theorize on a better way to run the assembly line, or some better way to make the product, make things more efficient, make a better product, or cut costs and beat your competition? There is no competition in communism, really, because there's no upward mobility. There's really nothing to be known for other than you spent 8, 10, 12 hours a day at some machine doing X, Y, and Z, and then you went home. In America, we had competition. A tool company would want to be known for making the very best tools, or, in some way or another, they were just number one, right? So they're all competing for that. And every industry in America was. Up until I guess the better way to point it out is since 1990, our government, just like Bloody 11, government engineering, government brilliance, government theorizing on how whatever should go without ever, they used to, but now certainly for the last 4, 5, 6 decades, not checking in with us, not checking in with what we wanted or needed or felt how, the choice should be made. And they being our, they're called representatives. Representative of what? Of us, of what we want. They're like the avatar of us that goes to wherever the voting happens, taking our wishes and our will along with them and representing that amongst, whatever the arguing is needed to make a deal, but not literally to just wake up in the morning and start thinking of things that they can do to us, or do without our say. So 74,000 manufacturing jobs, maybe there were 18 or 36 or 104 manufacturing firms that have closed their doors in the towns that I'm driving through since 1990. I've covered this before. American companies with government permission decided that as the government printed money to pay its bills, a lot less back then in the 80s and 90s, but certainly significant compared then as now to the amount of money that's already in existence, causing inflation to average, if you just look simply at commodity prices since the year 2000, 8% a year. So every 10 years, that's 80%. Think of that, every 12 years, I should have done that. 96%. Prices have utterly doubled. So these noble places to live, these noble towns alongside the Susquehanna River, in one of the greatest concentrations of engineering and industry on the earth, Pennsylvania, the great state of Pennsylvania, are now time capsules. Look at these pictures, folks. Time capsules. You look at the dog-eared homes. These were once majestic places to live where people would have woke up in the morning and walked out to their car. A lot of, back then garages were separate or the house didn't have a garage. And they would be looking around at all of these pretty homes and all of their neighbors headed off to work. Moms were generally at home raising kids, and not to be sexist, that's just, I think we could all agree, if we just put emotions and arguing aside, that the engineering of raising a human probably happens best if mom gets to do it. But mom was stripped of that option. She had to go off to work too, as the government printed money to pay its bills, causing you not to be able to pay yours. What we're really looking at here with these homes is that now these homes aren't attached to anything being made in this country in those towns. What we're seeing is the result of the families that still, and the humans that still live there, the Americans that still live there, don't have the extra money to fix up their homes. That's what we're looking at. And there's a picture of a car dealership here. It's an import dealership, and it's brand new. And it's quite the contrast, because where's the money coming from? Well, the money that's coming to those homes is from people working as cashiers or whatever, service jobs. God knows what jobs they have in these towns anymore, because they used to make stuff and now they just service stuff. And so they don't have the extra money. Their money, though, is coming from wherever they're working in that town in Pennsylvania. The money that's coming to the Mazda dealership is foreign money. It's also corporate money. Just since 2015, and I've said this before, the corporate earnings growth has been 350% in the last 10 years. Wages are only up 80%. And you could say, okay, companies kind of, I guess, make more than us, more than people. That's still not right. Where it's worse, though, is when you add this piece in, is that commodity prices and everything you're looking at here on my screen, everything that you're looking at, everything you're wearing, what you ate, everything is in some way or another commodities. Coffee, wheat, sugar, lumber, diesel to get the stuff to you and manufacture it, all of that. Coal. The commodity prices are up 400%. So just these pictures show you the sad visual evidence of, these are time capsules of homes built in the 40s, 50s, 60s that have not been modernized, that have not been replaced with something newer, that can't even be maintained. Paint peeling, roofs are sagging. You can just tell. And look at the streets, power lines crisscrossing the road everywhere. You don't see any of that in a wealthy neighborhood. You don't see the street above your head covered with power lines, zigzagging all across everywhere, like kite string, just run across haphazardly. It breaks my heart. These people had their futures taken from them because the onset of government printing money causing then the American companies to start saying to themselves, gosh, we got to pay these American workers so much money. There's workforces outside the country that'll work for $1 a day instead of $16, $14, $10, $9, $20 an hour. They'll work for $1 a day. And we don't want to necessarily shame the companies. They are an ecosystem that is supposed to find ways to cut costs and raise revenue and widen that gap between money coming in the door and money going out the door. That's what they're supposed to do. Their shareholders expect them to be hell-bent on that endeavor. But where it was our representatives, that's their frickin' job title, representing our interests, always, supremely our interests. That's why we sent them there. They're there in D.C. or they're in state government at the Capitol, representing our interests. There are avatars. There are proxies. They literally aren't supposed to be doing anything that we don't agree with, certainly anything that isn't in our best interest, and certainly wouldn't the future predictability and longevity of our generations be paramount. Working provides autonomy. The Indians, Native Americans, they had a different system. They didn't do commerce. They did trade, but everyone in the tribe kind of got to do what they wanted to do. We all remember, I remember in high school, actually it was 7th grade, taking a test, like, what are you going to do with your life? And you took some aptitude tests that kind of pointed out things you might be good at in case you didn't realize. When you were an Indian, you were going to make canoes, you were going to make bows and arrows, you were going to hunt, you were going to, figure out growing agriculture, crops, corn, tobacco, and stuff. You were just going to figure stuff out, but your day wasn't spent working. It was spent living. And, in the world of commerce, that's a different thing. Your autonomy comes because you work. Because the energy you expend at the job is replaced with a financial energy that comes back to you. And you get to store that up for when you can't work or don't want to work when you're older, right? That's very important. Autonomy is absolutely key to peace of mind and enjoying your time here. And we had it going on. So let me interrupt this for a second and just say, what made America great? Did the government sail over here from Europe and set this place up and set up, this great place to live, and then the people came? Or did the people come with their ideas and what they had fought for and what they were willing to sacrifice to get? They let go of, lit streets and houses and a system and their jobs and, friends and family in Europe to come here. Just think of that. Are you willing to do that right now? If there was a country that opened up, no one had moved to yet, and you could sail there and leave everything behind, would you go there and start America all over again? Let's say we found Australia, like no one had lived there yet. It's far away. It's got different climates to it. It's got stuff in the ground. You can do farming. It's got ocean on both sides. Obviously, it's on all sides, but like America, would you go there? Do you have the guts? Do you have the guts to just go right now? Hop on a wooden ship. You even get to go ride a cruise ship. Today, you'd get to ride a cruise ship, leave everything you have, and sail to this place called Australia. No one lives there yet. No one's there, except the Aborigines. They're there. So, we had the Indians. They have the Aborigines. There's no homes, there's no lit streets, there's no cropping, there's no farm, there's nothing going on. Do you have the guts to do that? I don't know if I do. So I'm just to be honest, I'll be honest, I don't know if I do. So what made America great, what would make any country once great would have been the people, not the government. It would have been the people, what we set up. And then, and of course, in close proximity to the country coming and forming, it's us that are actually in the government. It's not politicians. The old term was statesmen, men and women, mostly men back then, but statesmen, meaning literally us taking a break from our lives to go represent our part of the, country, our part of the state in government, where the arguing happens, where I represent what my state wants, the people in my state want, and mash that up against what you and your people want. And somehow we work out something, compromise, but both of our states get something good. That's the only way it could possibly work. And for as long as that orientation of government folks and the citizens here, as long as that can stay that way, then you'll have a great place to live. But the minute it changes, a few decades afterwards, you won't. And that's what we're looking at today. Our government literally said to these companies, fine, take your factory, close it here, set it up in China, hire Chinese workers, and just kill the future and the predictability and the peace of mind for the workers that you had here. Fuck that. These pictures are noble homes that the people living there now don't have enough money to maintain because they're spending it on all the other costs that have always been here, other than, healthcare and child care. Mom's got to do child care at home. Again, that's not sexist, but just think, how would you want to engineer? What do you think would give you the greatest odds of engineering a human that wouldn't end up on heroin, that wouldn't end up on oxy, that wouldn't be doing meth, that doesn't become difficult, a burden? Birds learn to fly, they're gone. They don't come back and burden their parents. There's a thrust, a drive within us to go do that. That's called autonomy. It's called self-agency. In the year 1215, it was the first time the people, us, the common folk, had been able to arm wrestle the nobility into giving us rights, to giving us say-so, to giving us some, wasn't full autonomy, but enough to start to consider it was coming to the people, that we would eventually have autonomy. 1215. All right, Christ comes in, the year 0, 2,000 years ago. 1,215 years later, the commoners finally have gotten themselves into a situation where they can argue against the nobility for some rights. It was called the Magna Carta. First attempt. The nobility literally considered that if you were born common, you did not possess the mental faculties to manage money, manage systems, manage businesses, manage towns, manage trade. That they were endowed with those mental faculties only. And then therefore were, with a birthright to leadership and management, there to care for you. Sound similar? So up until 1215, you had no rights, you had no voice. You don't have voice today. Last episode proved that. They're going to burn more, but just watering it all down. 10% of the data centers proposed to be built today, and the electrical demand that those would require. From my research, and I'm actually hoping I'm wrong somewhere, but to provide the electricity for 10% of the data centers that are being proposed to be built just in America, that's 450,000 tons of coal a day. A day. I'm going to figure out how much cubic mass that would be so we could understand. Is that like burning an Empire State Building worth of coal a day? Would it be 2 a day? So 360, if that filled an Empire State Building, I'll have to look this up. Someone else could do it for me and message me. But let's say 450,000 tons of coal would fill the Empire State Building, which I think is 80, 90, 100 stories tall. I should know this, right? I should have done more research. I apologize. I'll own that one. You're talking about burning 365 of those a year. You're talking about 3,650 of those for a decade. And that's just 10% of the data centers they're proposing. The only reason I point that out is for you to understand the magnitude of the project you have no say in. You have no say in. No one's coming to you. God bless Trump and the administration trying to do some ass kicking and turn some things into running efficiently as a business leader, business-minded person would. Let's tee up all of the senators in the House of Reps. Which ones of those started businesses? I mean, I've started some. Many of them have failed. I definitely can talk about the failures in my life, but I'm at least someone who took the initiative to go out and try. I've learned a great deal about what it takes to start a business and have it go well. It's like building a ship while you're at sea somewhat. Like you don't have everything. They're not just dropping a dump truck full of success on your yard and all the money needed to make that successful. You start off with scraps, and hopefully that turns into bigger scraps that you can turn back into the company. But there can be, 50 different things that cause the company to fail. The restaurant could just be not such a great name, right? Or you set it up in a strip mall where, people, you got overlooked. There's so many reasons why a business wouldn't fail, but let's look at all the Congress people and see what have they actually built back in their hometowns before they volunteered for the job. And it's one thing to be a doctor or a lawyer. Great. Went through 7 years of school. Okay, great. But to know what we have to go through, small business owners learn a very unique experience in the pain and the struggle and the 14-hour days and the stress of wondering and worrying. And if you got obligations, because you're not 19 starting a landscape business, which I did too, before you have kids and mortgages and family and just all this other stuff. When you're lean and mean, starting your own company, that's one thing. When you got families or you're trying to turn one around, what qualifies these elected officials to assert themselves on their own in the life management business? Because they suck at it. When we look at prohibition, another example, they're literally amended the Constitution, and this is going to tee up a little bit because this is forgive me for not mentioning it up front. This is a mini-series. This is episode 1 of an analysis of problems, and I have come up with solutions that are going to sound crazy. They're going to sound impossible, but I absolutely know I'm right. I actually absolutely know they're possible. We just have to recognize that we outnumber them. And it's not when it's time to vote. We are going to start a movement. We are going to take what is contained in this episode, the consciousness and the proof of actually where we're at as a people. We are going to start a movement. We do have something we have to head off. And it is going to not be something that mows us down and puts us away in a corner. It is going to be the thing that we rail against, causing us to then have a voice once more. Abso-frickin-lutely. When you think of a tomato plant, it needs something to grow against, or fruit spoils on the ground. It needs a stake, a tomato stake. Lots of vegetables are like that. Obviously, trees provide themselves their own staking. Apple trees, pear trees, cherry trees. They don't just grow on the ground. Even strawberry, the stuff doesn't grow on the ground, right? It's got to be hanging. It can't lay on the ground or it spoils. Obviously, squash, pumpkins, that's a different story. But leave them sitting there for a while and you see what happens, right? That one side gets all nasty, the side that's just laying on the dirt. So we need something to grow against. That is a principle. That is a principle, right? A kite can't fly unless it has that stress of being caught by the rope and pressed by the wind. If you didn't have the rope, the kite doesn't do anything. We need something to grow against, and we're going to cover that in episode 2. Right now, though, I want to show that America proved itself. These homes you were looking at in those images prove those are great homes 40 years ago. They prove success happened here, and those homes were built without a big government. This is when the people ran the show. You and me, we ran the show. We look at examples, though, of Magna Carta. So, God, it took us 1,215 years after Christ to finally find the moment and the motivation and the unity to come together, challenging the nobles to take some of their rights away from them and get and acquire them for ourselves. Obviously, the Declaration of Independence was the ultimate Magna Carta. And look who followed. The French, they're not necessarily known for winning wars and stuff. They were the reserve currency for a while and lost that mantle to England. But there was a French Empire at one point, so they did win. They did win at times. But when we look, when we think about fights, like in World War II, they're like, please don't blow up the Champs-Élysées. Lots of great architecture and art, and we don't, just please don't blow up our stuff. And Germany just, they drop in a week or two. England fought like hell to keep it from happening, but the French were like, we'll learn German, no problem. The British were like, you. And thank God for the British, little tiny island country. Got to watch out for those. So prohibition is a constitutional amendment. That alcohol is illegal in our country. Who the hell did you check into on that one? Right? You had a group, I understand. It was spiritual, Christian kind of ethic that alcohol is bad. Suddenly, you're going to tell us that we can't have it? Then you don't drink it, right? You want to live in a society that doesn't enjoy libation, doesn't enjoy alcohol? I don't know, go somewhere and make it. There are dry counties. I've lived in Arkansas when I was in the military. There's counties that they don't allow the sale of alcohol. There's no bars and they don't sell it in any of the stores. It's not in the restaurants. You'd have to go to a county that allows it. Fine, go set up your own county. But dictating to us while we're doing our jobs and raising our kids and getting over past our struggles and the obstacles that are thrown in our face by stupid stuff and by life itself, you're now going to just, because we all aren't living in DC, where we can go fight you out over this crap, we're dispersed around the countryside, you're going to take it upon yourselves to just say alcohol is illegal in this land and amend the Constitution? So we're going to use this as an example in episode 2. And, I'm doing my best to give you some juice here, some value, but I'm also wanting to tease your interest to come to episode 2. I can't cover this in an hour. And it's going to take a minute. To think that for however many, 13 years prohibition, alcohol is illegal. What was the outcome of that? We still drank, so the government lost massive amounts of credibility. And I was thinking of this too as I was driving on the highways, right? You see the speed limit sign, it says 55. In many places, it was on Highway 11. It's 65 and 70 miles an hour on 81. How many of us are driving the speed limit? Most of us aren't. The government loses credibility when they do stuff that is stupid or isn't aligned, like 65, 70. Okay, great. But we're all driving 80. And my average speed was, well, I probably shouldn't say that in case any cops are watching. I was driving the speed limit, but I watched a lot of people weren't. They were blowing my doors off. I couldn't believe the recklessness and lawlessness on the American highways. You've got your little signs up that say what the limit is, and no one's honoring that. That's just another stupid example of a government telling us what to do, and we're like, no, pull me over, fine. They don't really do radar in the 65 and 70 mile an hour. I mean, I've driven across the country many times. I don't see too many radar traps. There are states like Georgia is crazy with radar. But most of the time, no. So does that say you don't have the resources? I know in some states growing up, they want those speeding tickets because that funds their little, that funds stuff they do. It's funding. I know in Santa Monica, it's insane. In California, they have little 3-wheeled vehicles with armies of meter maids. And they're not out there like trying to punish absconders for temporarily using county asphalt too long than the period of time you bought with your quarters. They're literally doing it to raise revenue. It's sickening. I lived out there, man. It made me feel sick, like I'm a unwelcomed, visitor. Maybe my politics, I was unwelcome, but I live here. You're going to give me tickets in front of my own home? And the meter runs out a little long or it's broken. You got to park there anywhere and they still give you a ticket. It's on you to fix the meter, not me to find another spot. Anyway, this kind of crap's how the government loses credibility. Prohibition, that ushered in the mob. It created the revenue demand that would typically go to a wholesome purveyor of booze, to the mob. We all watch documentaries. It's fascinating. People, now towns are experiencing murders in the street, automatic weapons, Tommy guns. And the government comes and it like smashes holes in the kegs they find. So what? It should have never been illegal. The government created warfare on our streets, strife in our minds, because now we got to drink in what was called speakeasies. I'm not going to continue on this too long. Prohibition was ridiculous. Obamacare is ridiculous, not in the idea that it would be lovely for everyone to have health care. The fact that everyone in healthcare would ruin the potency of it for those who already have it. Is that really a solution? The great doctors, male and female, and whatever pronouns some of them maybe go by, left the insurance world. You know, I have a friend who needed a back operation. She got it done, $10,000, and insurance covered the rest. It was a horrible job. She had to have it done over again. And to get that great doctor, he didn't take insurance. He didn't need to. He had built a reputation of being top notch. So it was $65,000 out of pocket. I mean, she's fine. Now she's good, in a way. But when you look at what did Obamacare do? Okay, Corey, yeah, we want everyone to be taken care of. Of course, that's humanity at its heart. We generally want everyone to be taken care of. But if you can't actually deliver on it, then you can't do it. You got to keep toiling away for finding the solution that actually would work without penalizing the system itself, without ruining the system itself or causing it to not deliver. I mean, you can think of the doctors. They want to help as many patients as they can. But if you dump hundreds of, tens of millions of more patients into the system, you've overwhelmed the staffing of the healthcare industry itself. And it fries, it bails, it can't handle that workload. How asinine to consider, and people, I don't know. I think the pursuit of the medical, staffing world has fallen off in numbers, where long ago it was rising regularly. So there was a nice increase in people coming out of college to fill the jobs needed in the healthcare industry, from doctor down to admins. And the patients were, demand for healthcare was rising as well. And now there's a breakdown in that regard. So let's summarize. The people that sailed on the wooden ships to a land where there was nothing made America, and made those mindsets made America great. They also made all the stuff great, the stuff the world needed great. From sewing needles to bulldozers, made here in America, best product you could get. And we were exporters of those goods. And our towns were prideful in a wholesome way, because they made the best stuff, whether they were making sewing needles or bulldozers. They lived nearby work. They didn't have crazy commutes. The whole town, worked at these factories. So they all shared in the same fight. They all shared in the same glory. People didn't envy the factory owner for being able to get a new Cadillac every year, and they're driving older vehicles or only have one. They don't care. They had peace of mind. They had autonomy. Their earnings overwhelmed their bills greatly. By the time you were 40, your earnings were so far ahead of what it was to the cost of living was. You literally could breathe. You could see, oh my God, I'm going to be able to pay for college if my kids want to go. You didn't have to go back then to do well in life. Think of the engineering of life, just plainly stated. Would it be by design only capable of rewarding high intellect and high achievement? That's the only realm. You'd have to get into that. You'd have to have that to be in that realm where you get peace of mind. If you aren't super smart or aren't super well read or motivated, you get punished. No, that's not how life works. The little birds get to enjoy life as much as the eagles and the hawks and the falcons and the buzzards. Like, there's no In that diversity, there is no punishment. In the diversity of intellect, getting at, gumption, motivation, aggression, if you will, assertiveness, entrepreneurialism, having it, not having it, America enjoyed itself. And today it doesn't. And it is literally because of government decisions. They literally cannot see. They are not you. And they have betrayed us long ago. Now they're just following the patterns of their predecessors. They no longer represent you and I. We could get into what they do represent, but it's easier just to say what they are doing. And what they are doing is doing things they didn't ask our opinion about. Didn't come back to us, have the town halls, here's some stuff, whatever, they number the Congresses every year. Whatever this year's Congress is facing, considering, deciding on, what's your take? How should I vote? What do you want me to do? They're doing that. That's their job. That's actually their function. It's really the only thing we want them to do is meet with us, tell us about things Congress is considering, deciding, and hear our opinions about it, and take that, polling data, whatever, that consensus, if we're for it or against it, the majority always wins, back to Congress, back to DC, and argue it out. And then we'll get to measure how well you did. And if we don't think you carried our interests very well, represented us well, we get rid of you. But that's okay, because don't you want to be good at your job? So if you didn't do well at the job you volunteered for, then you should probably want to go off and pursue something you're good at, because you weren't good at doing the job you volunteered for, being our representative, whether you were our senator or our House of Reps. I would think people want the praise and adulation of doing a good job. I know that motivates me. I know that motivates you. So if we can't give that to them, but is that why? That's why they don't check in with us now. They don't want to hear it. And they've learned how ridiculous our part is, that we'll just keep reelecting the familiar face. That's how you end up with these lifers. I mean, let's make a list of the great things Nancy Pelosi did for whatever her part of California was. Or Maxine Waters, or Jesse Jackson, right? What are their great accomplishments? They participated in a bill here and there, the Obamacare. I know they weren't around for prohibition, but where's the body of work that makes us proud of you because of the job you did representing us? No one can produce that. So that's our part. We have to recognize that we have not been unified for a long time. It was nice. I want to say this better. When 9/11 happened, it was nice to see all the flags in front of everybody's house. For a minute, there were a lot of United Americans in this country. For a minute. And then the arguing started. That's kind of it for today. Dog pictures of the dog are coming, but the ones I've showed you today of these grand homes that now are not so grand, and these grand towns that had the heart of what made them form, sent overseas. Yes, the greedsters, the corporateers, profiteers, whatever, the corporations made that happen. Our government could have said no. Had we had representatives of our best interests, empowered, courageous, hopefully they wish they were. Obviously, they didn't have the courage to stand to the lobbyists, to stand to the corporations, showing them how this was all going to be so freaking great. And now you got AI coming around the corner. So episode 2 is going to start to dig into the solution set for making sure we use this opportunity to have a voice and dictate how things will go as AI comes and replaces all of your jobs. Thank you for watching.